Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data Dispatch. It's good to be back. Thank you for being back. We're going to be talking about all the important things that are going to be happening within the market this week, not just in terms of the general market, but specifically Palantir Technologies, because come this Friday, there are going to be some major events that are happening that could have a big benefit to PLTR specifically. Now, we're going to be recapping what happened last week, what to look forward to this week regarding the general market, some of the other big AI stocks that we've talked about, such as NVDA, and how Palantir kind of falls into the whole mix of all of that. So if you are a new or returning viewer, thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos, and of course, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm collecting all the data and dispatching it to you. Now, if we pop it up on the screen here, Palantir Technologies, remember, last Friday closed here at 2168. And what we see is kind of going into the overnight markets right now, being consistent at 2165 right now as we speak. So not a lot of volatility. We usually don't have a lot of volatility until the market does open. But talking about the price and where it sits right now, in these low 20s, holding above this $20 support level has been critically important for PLTR and has done a really good job of doing that. As you can see here, just looking at this trend line at the 20, there's been some important reversals, lots of touch points, and specifically last week with that $480 million Army contract, I think this was an important catalyst that helped push PLTR and could lead it to a breakout zone with all the other variables that of course need to fall into place. But another good reason to hold above the 20s, considering this is a strong foundational support level that is continuing to improve upon itself. Now, if we look into what we need to be focusing on for the markets next week, one of the big things here that we talked about last week was that PCE index data that really gave us a good gauge on how inflation is doing and what we saw for the previous month. Long story short, things basically kept in line with what the analysts were predicting. And this was good because this means that the probability of those interest rates, the first cuts happening in September, is basically holding consistent at about 50%. Now, looking into the markets this week, a big thing that's going to be coming up Friday is the U.S. employment report and also earnings from some of the big companies. But the U.S. job report on Friday is also going to give some insights and give us more of a state of kind of that probability of those interest rate cuts and just how the market is doing in terms of the general economy. Now, how does Palantir fall into this, and specifically before June 21st, and what to look forward to this Friday? And that is because June 7th is going to be the S&P 500 quarterly announcement date of which stocks will be included in the S&P 500 that will take into effect June 21st. And we're going to be talking about what does this mean if Palantir does get included? Are they met in terms of the criteria, the conditions, and what kind of things have we seen historically when stocks do join the S&P 500? Now, of course, this is a major milestone for any company to reach the S&P 500 and usually brings kind of this general atmosphere of maturity to a company. This is not Palantir's first opportunity to join the S&P 500. One of the criteria is they must meet 4 quarters of GAAP profitability, and Palantir is now on its 6th quarter of GAAP profitability, and especially as it continues to report these really milestone and historical earnings. Now, talking about PLTR and how it relates to being included into the S&P 500. Will it be chosen? Of course, we don't know. It would only be beneficial, in my own opinion, but we shouldn't really obsess too much into it. And what I really mean by this is that if Palantir doesn't get included into the S&P 500, it hasn't in the last 2 quarters. It's been eligible since, I believe, quarter 3 of 2023. So the fact that it's been eligible for a while, we haven't really seen negative effects if it has not made the announcement. So come Friday, if it's not included, I think nothing really changes. However, if it does get included, that's where some of the benefits can come in. And that's because initially what we've seen is a bump in valuation when stocks do join the S&P 500. Historically, about a 5 to 7% increase just due to all of the general funds that are tracking the S&P 500. You kind of have more of this universal buying pressure, specifically not from people that are particularly interested solely in Palantir by buying the individual stock, but by participating in funds that are tracking the whole market index and specifically the S&P 500, you have a lot of just general buying pressure that can create momentum, possibly lead to a breakout, compiling that with the Army contract that is where we could see a catalyst for PLTR entering kind of its mid-20s area, returning to its previous area before we had the quarter one earnings after future guidance was kind of adjusted a little bit, and that's why we saw the sell-off. Now, good things that are happening fundamentally within the company in terms of news, in terms of headlines, are, of course, that $480 million contract. This has really been a big catalyst for PLTR, specifically because they have had a good expansion into their AIP type of atmosphere, improving upon its commercial customer count and commercial revenue. But now you can see still continuing to build and land these very large governmental contracts. And especially here at the Army here for the Maven Smart System, there's over $100 million that will be paid out right away. And in addition, they've also expanded with Eaton in here in terms of another partnership, and you're seeing the commercial customer account that is still continuing to grow. So this leads us to, where does Palantir sit in terms of a buy, sell, or hold? And specifically, we're looking at what the analysts are saying right now. And all the analysts that are out there, we've seen some of the highest price targets, Webush and things like that, Dan Ives, $35. We've seen RBC Capital, the lower end, $9. I'll tell you right now, if PLTR gets to $9, I think a lot of the Palantir bulls out there would be accumulating shares at a very, very fast rate. But where we sit in the middle is at a hold right now, 12 ratings sitting at a hold. Average price targets at $22.11. Right now at $21.68. So basically right at about that level where the average price target sits. What's interesting specifically about this price target is that $22.40 is also kind of more of a micro level of support that could be beneficial for PLTR to hold and get upon in terms of a technical basis. So compiled with that, with the jobs data, and the S&P 500 announcement, you could have this bullish short-term push to the mid-20s if all the stars align. But like I said, it's a big variable, and I don't think we should specifically kind of hold that to a guarantee by any means. But talking about that specifically, PLTR, next earnings is about 2 months from now, 8 cents per share. We're seeing earnings per share, 7 earnings per share revisions in the bullish directions, 2 in the bearish. It's kind of good to actually have a little bit of some bearish earnings per share revisions. The reason I say that is because Wall Street has really set PLTR to always achieve this bar, hitting this milestone, and keep going. They expect them to do better and better and better and better and better. Eventually, they're going to have to be realistic, change their numbers a little bit. And that's kind of what we saw in the last quarter. And I like this from a company because they're being truthful and they're being realistic in the numbers that they're going to report and what they expect to report. And I think that's incredibly important from a transparency perspective. If you want to get all the data that I get on Seeking Alpha, I am an affiliate with them. Check out to get a premium membership for 20% off using my link down in the description. Another big thing for Friday. A lot of things are happening Friday, like I said. This is going to be the 10-for-1 stock split for NVIDIA. It's going to be happening post-market June 7th. The actual trading of the stock split into its effect is going to be happening June 10th at the beginning of the market open. Now, NVIDIA, and specifically why we talk about this, is because they've also continued to have historical earnings and have been really an AI leader right now, sitting at $1,100. A big thing that this can help in terms, and we've seen that NVIDIA does not always kind of set the bar or does not trade just like PLTR in terms of AI stocks, trying to find kind of a gold standard there. But NVIDIA, a top AI stock company now that we could definitely argue for, is going through a big stock split. And I think this is going to cause a lot of attraction into the AI industry and into NVIDIA specifically, because now a share is going to be 1/10 of its price. And just in terms of that, one of the big things people say, oh, why don't you, all these trading platforms, you can just buy fractional shares now. But options activity is really going to pick up, because now the power to control 100 shares, if you're either buying calls or puts, is going to become cheaper, and that volatility is going to pick up, going to bring more volatility into the AI market in general. That's where I sit. PLTR. I want to know, what are your guys' thoughts, and specifically, do you think that it'll be included this Friday on the 7th, the announcement date? Do you think we'd see a positive effect, or do you think it's not going to happen and PLTR is just going to keep continuing to trade along these mid-20s, really depending on what's going to be happening with the jobs report? A lot of variables up in the air, but where I sit in the short term, I think PLTR is going to sit and consolidate unless we do have a course out announcement. I think we're going to see some pressure coming up. That's where I sit in the short term. Peace out, take care, have a great start to your week, and I will catch you guys later.